Hi there, and welcome to the studio. Today I'm going to guide you through how I've arranged, produced, and mixed the song Forging On, specifically drums, percussion, sound effects, and bass in this part. Before we begin, I just want to say that I appreciate that you're watching my videos and listening to my music. If you enjoy what I'm doing, liking and commenting is always welcome. And if you want to support me directly, you can do that by becoming a patron. As such, you will also get access to my songs before everyone else, downloadable MP3s, instrumentals, draft versions, and more. Let's get on with the video. I will also say that I'm going to take you through the actual mix that made it to release and not a fixed version. We will likely discover some redundancies and questionable choices. And that's okay. This is not a perfect mix, if there is such a thing. I listened and tweaked according to what I thought sounded good at the time. At a first glance, the drum track in this song looks quite simple, but don't be fooled by the first impression. To start with, I wanted to find a drum kit with a room that was a good fit for Orn, something that would place well in his mountain halls. The choice fell on this Masshof kit recorded in the Meistersaal from the rooms of Hansa SDX by Toontrack. To be perfectly honest, I chose this kit because the Meistersaal has an incredible natural ambience that I wanted to use and amplify to make the drums sound big. I'm going to turn off all the processing in the Superior Drummer 3 plugin, all the inserts, the Cubase channel strips, EQ, and all the effect sends. Listen closely as I activate the different sections. Let's turn on the Superior Drummer 3 processing first. Now the Cubase channel strip and EQ. All the inserts. And finally, the sends. Quite a big difference. Instead of going into excruciating detail about how I processed each individual drum, I'll go through some of the most noteworthy moves I've done. If we start by looking at the shells, meaning kick drum, snare drum, and toms, I wanted to squeeze as much punch and fatness out of them as possible without making the transients peak like crazy. I'm compressing, clipping, and saturating in several stages, sometimes in parallel. I'm shaping the envelope a bit for the kick and the toms, because when you compress and saturate in parallel a lot, like I've done, you're bringing out a ton of energy, but you're also bringing out more rumble and stuff that you don't necessarily want in there. So I've used envelope shapers to decrease the ringing of these drums. Let's take a look at these two effect sends. The snare API snap is a send channel that has this beautiful API 527 compressor on it. It's really slamming the snare, and then a fair amount of grind from this decapitator to bring out more tone. It's tucked in under the snare to make it pop more. Same thing with this shells snap bus. I'm sending the shells through a DBX 160A compressor, which is slamming them quite hard, a bit of saturation to round off the signal, and then blend it into the drum mix. let's take a look at the overhead channel. As you can hear, it's very bright. And the purpose of it is to bring out the cymbals and hi-hats. If we move on to the superior room channel, this is where all the ambience mics are routed through. And this is where the size of the entire drum kit really is located. On this channel, I'm using compressors with fast attacks and medium to slow releases. And the purpose of that is to leave plenty of space for the transients in the shells and then to fill out the space between the hits. I'm also adding a bit of superplate to exaggerate the largeness of the kit even more. With the superplate, I'm using a long tail of 4 seconds, and to prevent it from muddying up the mix too much, I'm EQing, and I'm also using this very neat function inside of superplate that automatically lowers the decay at a set threshold. So every time the kick and snare pokes through, the decay is lowered to around 1 second. There's obviously so much that I could talk about with the drum mix alone, with lots of moves doing very subtle but meaningful things in the context of the mix. But to avoid this video being too long, I'll skip ahead to the final piece of the drum puzzle, the drum bus. I felt overall that the drums needed a lot of top lift, and I've done that in several stages, and the drum bus is no exception. First, I sent all the drums through the Drummer 1978 tone shaping compressor. It's a very versatile compressor with all these tone shaping capabilities. I specifically pushed the saturation and sidechain EQ in the top end, and then dialed it in at about 40% wet. Finally, a Lindell TE100 EQ is used to lift a little bit more at 3.2K and 6.5K. Let's move on to the percussion. There are a few layers of this percussion package. The Tychos, Armageddon, and Dead the Beast kits make up the foundation of the rhythm. Then, since the song is inspired by Orn, I wanted a few kits with metallic impacts. The Nagara percussion is simply there for some human flavor. Let's bring in the sound effects as well. For this track, I've arranged the sound effects to add to the rhythm section and not just add ambience. There are some risers to emphasize transitions and hits. The anvil sound is pretty self-explanatory. It's not played in rhythm, and that's just to create more liveliness. The steaming water effects is also for immersion. It's pretty much the sound of plunging hot iron into water. This rhythmic machinery channel in particular does a lot for the rhythm. Originally a blacksmith bellows loop, I've edited it to fit with the tempo and then exaggerating this breathing by using a very simple LFO automation in Snap Heap. This custom LFO increases the gain and the saturation in tempo with the song. Together with the percussion, it creates a very nice breathing in the dynamic. mostly present in the intro and first verses. As the drums and guitars come in swinging, I'm using this automation lane to back off the percussion and leave more space in the mix. Let's move on to the bass. I played the electric bass with an Ibanez 5-string bass. As you can see here, I have duplicated the signal to process them separately. In the bass DI high cut channel, I've filtered out everything above 140 Hz and sent the signal through a tweezer compressor that is really pinning it quite hard. Then through an R-bass to bring out the subharmonic content. And another channel strip compressor. The reason behind doing this is to control the low and the sub-low content of the bass and make it very even and powerful, which creates a strong fundamental with the drums. The other half of the split signal is treated quite the opposite. I filtered out all the low end below 200 Hz, a little bit of distortion and compression, only to send it to this bass cab effect. The bass cab effect has much more bite and saturation and even low mids. I'm sending the effect pre-fader so that I get a clear separation of these sounds as well. I get more of a string pluck sound from the DI low cut, and I get more of a bass cabinet sound out of the bass cab. Since I'm sending the DI pre-fader, I can pull the DI channel down to hear just the cab simulation, and then bring up the fader a little bit to get more string, and that's exactly what I've done. When I wrote the song, for convenience, I used the Easy Bass 2 instrument to come up with the bass line, and I used that one to create a pretty nasty distortion effect. Blended with the electric bass, and together they create a bass tone with both very solid low end and lots of bite. Oh, and look at that. There's another little bass track in here. This bass drone instrument is only here for the choruses, when the electric bass is not present to beef up the low end. Actually, I see that it's playing here during the second chorus too. Optimally, I would mute this block here to prevent unnecessary buildup of bass during this chorus. Last thing about the bass is that all these basses are routed through the bass group channel. A little bit of Cubase channel EQ going on here, cutting out low mid mud, boosting low and mid range. And then this frequency plugin has a wide low shelf, and it's set to dynamic, only triggering when the kick drum is playing. It's a bit of a cheap trick to allow the bass to take up plenty of space in the low end, and then automatically carve out space for the kick as the drum hits. The magic of dynamic EQ. That's it for the drums, percussion, and bass. Next time, we will delve into the orchestral instruments, guitars, and over 100 channels of vocals. If you have any questions about the things I've gone over, just leave them in the comment section and I will respond to them. I sincerely hope that you found something useful in my ramblings. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.